Hi, Rabbi, and thank you. Our group's question was regarding the last paragraph on page 5 about the death of David and the hungry dogs, and the quote from Solomon, "For a living dog is better than a dead lion," and then the following conclusion about that the spirit of man is the lamp of the Lord. It is preferable that the lamp of a being of flesh and blood, an actual lamp, will be extinguished in favor of the lamp of the Holy One. We weren't clear on how the first part, the middle quote, and the final conclusion related to each other, and we were wondering if you could clarify the relationship between those three portions of the text.
Well, basically, there are two things. One of them was about the dealing again with the same basic question about the living and the dead. The living and the dead. And here we come even to a much far more reaching idea than it was before. It's not only that the living person is perhaps more important than a dead person. Even a living dog is more important in a certain level than a dead person. Heroic and great as he is, still somebody is living and needs to eat. So that is the point about settling more or less one of the sides of the question about the living and the dead, which means in fact we don't have here a real complete answer. We have here discussions of life, death, merit of people, merit of life and merit of death. So, but one of the points that comes up from this discussion, in fact, even from the end of this discussion, comes to that at the end of it, the merit of the dead can be very great. We remember it, we know, we honor it, but still, life takes precedence. Life takes precedence in any way it can be. So life takes precedence above possibly everything. So this kind of a problem about it's not. We have the notion about in the laws of Shabbat that pikuach nefesh, which means saving a soul, is more important than keeping the Shabbat. Here we go much farther. We speak about it that living has a merit, and because of that, the answer about it's not just the lamp of God and the human candle. It goes into something further. The person living, even when it is not a matter of life and death, it's a matter of suffering from having a little bit too much light in his room is enough to push away the laws of Shabbat. So it's not a complete answer for the basic question. We have here a development of a theme, but life and death, merit and still being alive. And somehow the conclusion comes that at the end we come back to the statement of David that the dead don't praise the Lord. The living in one way or another do give the praise. And in that sense, the living dogs are also take precedence. They do something useful. So in a way it is, the basic answer is it's the triumph of life over almost anything else. Even over the great memories, honor, glory of the dead, and on the other hand, what I call life, what life can do. And in that sense, even to tell all this story about the hungry dogs, makes it in a way far more emphatic. Life takes precedence. It's a great thing about life. and life should be taking precedence over death. That is if we want to have some kind of a general conclusion of the whole discussion, it is we have the dead heroes and the living small people. The dead heroes that are more important, more honorable, but still, when it comes to any practical question, give life precedence.
We still on? Thank you, Rabbi. I think you may have just answered our question, but I'm going to put it in a slightly different way. We looked at the last paragraph in which Rabbi Tanhum's conclusion was presented, and went back to the Mishnah, where it lists a variety of situations in which it's acceptable to turn off to extinguish the candle. And it caused us to ask, what actually does threaten the light of the Spirit? Is it just that death is imminent, or might be imminent, or is it actually fear as well? Because at the beginning of the statement in the Mishnah, the things that were listed as possibilities, as acceptable to extinguish the light, are fear of the possibility of death.
This is not only the possibility of death. See, it is not just the possibility of death. It goes in the Mishnah, it goes into points that are, a person is afraid of a spirit, of a ghost. It's possibly not, it's not dangerous like having gangsters standing on the doorway, but still a person feels unhappy about it. So in that sense, again, it is the spirit of man, the life of man, and not like just life as against death. Life in the whole expression of life. So life is more important, and that goes on not only in this case, but in many other cases in which we have, when you have to make a choice, then life is more important. Life is more important. So important as we can bypass all kinds of things because that is more important. In fact, in the Mishnah and other places, it also speaks about something which is far more halachically serious, which is in some cases when a person is sick and feels lonely or afraid, in being in the darkness, you can light a candle, which is much more of a deed of that. So even though the life of a person is that important, it is not meant of it. You put it in a different way. That is it a desecration of Shabbat? No, it is triumph of life. We say that the Shabbat is, in that sense, Shabbat is a part of what I call of the gift of the Lord to people, and should accept it as a gift.
Erev Tov, Rav Steinsaltz. Our discussion centered on the words of God to David, where he said, "For a day in your courts is better than 1,000," and also on the chain of generations from David to Solomon. And our question is this: we learned from the text that preserving life is of supreme importance, but what is the core reason for that? Is preserving life of such importance so that we ourselves can continue to study Torah, or is it rather so that we can propagate future generations who will themselves study Torah and possibly bring redemption?
Look, we are speaking only here basically. We speak about individuals. We don't speak about the generations to come, what may happen. In fact, in a certain way, to put it in a way, also the halachic notion is that one can, when there is a matter of preserving life, one can do anything on Shabbat to preserve life, even when that person is anyway dying. See, when we're sure that he is dying, we can give that person one extra minute. In this minute he cannot propagate. In this minute he cannot do very much. He cannot even do worship. But it is life, and because of that, so that is the point here. It's not about David that is the father of whatever it is. It is David as a person. And more than that, in this case, it's also David is, the living David is doing things. The dead David is a memory. The memory may be exalted and important, but the living David is more important.
Erev Tov, Rabbi. Our question took off from the reading onto something else. Given that we learned in this portion that death frees us from the responsibility of performing mitzvot, and aware also that when we say Kaddish for 11 months, we're attempting to help elevate the soul to the afterlife. Our question is, what is the function of the soul in the afterlife?
Well, basically, basically, the soul in the afterlife is just, I say, blooming. In this world, we have all kinds of handicaps, physical handicaps, sometimes intellectual handicaps. Then we are set, contrary to what the text says here about freedom. In a way, the afterlife means freedom. It is freedom in a different way. A person is freed from all kinds of ties and restraints that he has in this life. But according to, even though it could be, if to deal about high theology, and I'm not going to do now all the high theology, the question about what I call the joy of afterlife is, according to, at least to most of our authorities, it's a kind of a rest. You rest for a while. Perhaps you rest for 10 minutes because you are be sent back to this world in a different way. You can rest there for 1,000 years because nobody has any special use for you. But that is time of rest. That is not a reward not for the good deeds, but it is just a person did something and now he has a certain height to rest, and if one may say so, we are fogged by our own understanding, by our own teachings, by our own teachers, by life and other things. This freedom, that getting away, the kind of when the spirit is free, is a freedom, and it gives some kind of rest. It is not resting in peace forever. It is resting in peace, as I said, until there will come the final judgment. And for the time being, they are resting. So in that sense, that is the notion that whatever people do is they are doing it there. Now, about the point if mentioned already about saying Kaddish. See, when a person dies, this persona theoretically is no longer here in this world. But on the other hand, whatever person achieves, and in that sense, children, disciples, people that he influenced, people that have done, they are all a continuation of life in the next life. And the life of a person is not finished when he is dead, in that sense, because his influence in one way or another is still going on. So saying Kaddish is not a way of mourning. It's just, we say, okay, poor guy, you cannot say Kaddish now, you are dead. So we say instead of you, we say the Kaddish. So it will be accounted that you caused us to make the what Kaddish is really Gloria. So we make the Gloria for the Lord. And so it accumulates that this person, even though he's dead, is still somehow working in this world. So let us help him work in this world by remembering him, but the memory is just a small thing. Let's do those things that he didn't accomplish in this life. We do it further and going further with it. So that's what we are doing, and we are trying to give this the personality in general. In when it was it's 70, 80, 90 years in this world, and what continued later on. And this continuation is a part of the way that a person is judged in reality, which is the continuation, and whatever comes from that person is a part of a long judgment of a person in life.
Erev Tov. It's a privilege to learn with you, Rav Steinsaltz. Our question, my group's question, is more related to the text again. Earlier in the text, Moshe has to invoke deceased ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, to receive an answer to his prayers. At the end, the Solomon's statement about "for a living dog is better than a dead lion," where we interpret dead lion as a metaphor for David as a leader. How do you reconcile those two parts of this text?
So in fact they are reconciled in the text itself. See, what is the merit of a person? The merit of a person, even when he is dead, can be sometimes outweighed the merit of his living descendants and those who are in a certain way living by his merit, which is when we judge who is important. Are those people that our poor ancestors that left Egypt, and they were a motley crowd of people, slaves, ignorant, and possibly more accustomed to flogs than to learning. And we remember the glorious forefathers who really were path makers in history. So if we speak about merit, the merit of those forefathers in which we try to be a continuation is more important. But then it comes, what will you do when you have a choice about real life, about the living people and the dead people? So it says the dead people, they should be revered, they should be respected, they should be remembered. But when it goes to giving, to taking care for a little baby, or even for an animal, they take precedence. They take precedence not because they are more important, but because they have that different and very special merit of being alive, of being a part of it is they are the future, but they are also something else. They are those that fulfill God's work in the world. Those who died did it, and they are worthy of all honor, all glory. But when it comes to do with something that I have to deal in this world, those people who have some kind of life in them still take precedence. It is not belittling the dead. It is just saying there are other considerations in which the living take precedence.
Hi, Rav Steinsaltz. First, I just quickly wanted to say thank you for putting the treasury of rabbinic literature in my hands for your years of tireless work. As a Jew and a Jewish woman, I sincerely thank you. Our question. The last teaching in this sugya states that it is preferable that the lamp of flesh and blood will be extinguished in favor of the lamp of the Holy One, blessed be He. So we're wondering, is it possible to extinguish the nair of the Holy One?
Look, if we look in the world, you don't have to look very far away. Even even in the United States, you can see that lots of people are trying very hard to extinguish as many of those light of the Almighty by the way that they can do it. They cannot kill the souls, but they can kill the people. So it is surely done, and that is what we're speaking. We're speaking about. We don't distinguish the soul in the metaphysical way or in a real theoretical way, but we distinguish a life, and this life is, as so far it was the as it says, Ner Hashem Mishmat Adam, the candle of God, of the Lord is a human soul. So this is His candle. So it should be given also due respect, because it is an important candle. It is important. It is important not because you cannot damage it. You can and do, but still you should remember it. That is something exalted, and it is not just a matter of that is perhaps more useful. It can do more work and it can earn more money, but the basic merit of a person, a living person, which is the candle of the Lord. So that is the glory, and that is the merit. We are sometimes, and that's always a problem. But sometimes we care about other things, and we care about very contemporary little candles, and one has to see what's happening in the world. Among other things, why people are sometimes killed and maimed for nonsensical, idiotic things that are really very small pieces of shards of unimportant things. So that's the memory of that, of distinguishing between the see in a person the candle of the Lord is in itself a kind of a very strong, very strong statement in remembering that it should always be remembered. That is something exalted, something that is, as we say, as high as one can achieve ever.
Thank you, Rabbi. My question is more general. Why do the rabbis use David as an example so much when he committed practically every sin in the book?
Well, first of all, you shouldn't exaggerate. He wasn't an American president. He couldn't do so many sins. That is one thing. But basically, he didn't commit all the sins in the world. He did some things that were surely very wrong. Usually, and that is the kind. He had a life that wasn't a life of just frivolity and of doing things to excess or trying to take advantage of people. So basically, and that is the story. Sometimes even the wonder, how comes that a person that is a righteous person and an honorable person and a saintly person comes to do such things, and we don't have good answers for it, even though we say that in a way the story of David and the fact that it wasn't censored out of the books. Just think about it. It is easy just not to mention the story. It was a story. It happened some times ago, and nobody now cares about it. So we can delete it. The point is, it is mentioned. It is mentioned to say that nobody can be above the ability of making a mistake, even of sinning willfully. The real point, and that is why when we take to David. David is in a certain way the Psalms of David, not so much the history of David. The Psalms of David are an expression of a person that is devoted and is connected, and his life is always with this kind of a connection. It is a love and not so much obedience. It is love. It's a tie with God. and also a person that is suffering for reasons that are his fault, and most of the things that are not his fault. But you see, in that sense, we take him because if you want to do it, and I would say something that's possibly shouldn't be said aloud, surely not to America. See, when we take David as the sweet songer of Israel, we take David as one of the greatest generals that Israel had. We take David as a person that created a nation. We take David as a person with so many talents. Then we sometimes feel, okay, that is David, and where is me? I'm not at the same level. Now, the sin of David is one of the things that we can at least, if we don't understand his greatness, we can at least understand his sin. So in that sense, we are connected. So we mention him because he is in a different way. He is in some way with his talents, with his beauty, with his ability to suffer, to do other things. What does he do? He is as the personification of a person. He is the person. That is why not only we as Jews that have a special connection, but so many millions, many millions, hundreds of millions of people recite the Psalms of David because it is for them the picture, perhaps an exalted picture of themselves. So there is the picture of themselves, also with the flaws and with the glory. So we understand the flaws sometimes, and sometimes we are too much connected to them. On the other side, and we see the glory. So it is a kind of something that it becomes. So David is in fact, David is what I can become if I work enough on that. So it's not just as a person. There are people that in a certain way, a normal human being cannot really be an imitation of Moses. It's too far removed and too high up. With David, I can have a connection. That's why he's mentioned so many times. He's mentioned so many times because he's what we are supposed to be. Ups and downs, and at the end, as they say, which is a very important statement, even though it is not written in the Psalms of David, but in the wisdom of Solomon. The righteous falls 7 times and stands up. That is the story of David. You can fall practically, you can fall militarily, you can fall even spiritually, but you stand up and you go on. And that's what this David is.
Thank you. Rabbi Steinsaltz, we read that David studies Torah for the sake of avoiding his death. What does that say about the purpose of Torah study? Don't we have a tradition that asks us to study for the sake of study?
Oh, of course we study for the sake of study. Studying as a charm is a very small charm. But in a way, nobody wants. The people wrote poetry about it. There's even lots of English poetry about all the charms of the angel of death, about the beauty of the angel of death, about the glory of the angel of death. You have, if you go through English literature, especially English, and you can find lots of writings about this. So, in a way, our people in general, we don't like him, the angel of death, and we don't want to meet him. So, David wants to be on the safe side, and he says, as long as I'm doing it, the harm won't touch me. But if I'm learning for that, it's not enough. It's not enough even for to save me from the angel of death. I'm learning, and I'm studying. I'm studying because studying is in many ways a kind of our way of becoming it. Again, sorry for the language. For us, studying is basically a communion with the Lord. But while on the side of what David says, okay, well, while I am commuting with and connected with the Lord, the angel of death should not interfere. So that is an aside. It is not the reason why he studies. He studies before, he studies later. But he doesn't want to be entangled with this angel. And again, as we spoke all about it before, is whatever it is in paradise, it is perhaps a better thing to be here and to do what we can do instead of going to paradise and be free and nice and perhaps happy.
So this Gahal, this collection of people, represents a portion of all the Bay Area community Talmud circles. That's from Berkeley to San Francisco to the North Peninsula to Palo Alto. Did I cover everything? San Francisco, everything, and then up to Sunny Marin. Hundreds of students studying at 2 levels. We have. Can I see the hands of all the students for the first year students studying, and these saying Pesachim, right now Pesachim, and all the continuing students in Brachot. So we are in our 2nd year, as we plan to go into our 3rd year next year. Oh, and by the way, last year at this time you asked to speak about animals, and you say that people will let you speak about animals someday, and someday never comes. But this time you got to speak about dogs.
Okay, let me just say that possibly I wrote many years ago a small article about dogs in the Jewish tradition. And it was possibly my most popular work. It has been repeated and printed and again. So seemingly, even though Jews are traditionally afraid of dogs, they have I would say, ambiguous relationship to dogs, especially if the dog is keeping the garden of the neighbor and not barking on me. Anyway, I'll be glad to speak about animals, just to make it a little bit livelier and not all the time to speak about theology.
So in conclusion, as we look towards next year of study, as we conclude today, any final words of wisdom for us as we complete this Lag BaOmer with you?
Well, look, the only thing that I can tell you is that there is the traditional Jewish blessing to live to 120. Now, people don't, it's not still very, very realistic for every person, but let me just say that the notion of living to 120 means it is a plan. I should make my calculations about life, and especially about what I'm going to do, as if I'm going to live at least 220, which means if you are, some of you are perhaps 50 years old or 60 years old, just imagine you have another 60 years of study. You can, in this time, you can become giants in Torah. You can become accomplished in every other level. So please remember it, that there is so many years of doing things, and people should go on just now, beginning to do things for the next 60, 70 or 80 years that they have before them, and hopefully we'll meet again in about 120 years, and we'll see what all of us have accomplished.
All right.